Welcome to richplanet.net, the programme which aims to uncover the truth behind the alien and UFO mystery. I'm Richard D. Hall, and in this week's programme I look into the very murky subject of underground bases. There are more rumours about top-secret underground bases than you can shake a banana at. Some of these bases allegedly contain alien beings, although I wouldn't recommend shaking a banana at any of them. I will be speaking to Miles Johnston, who has spent years grappling with the various characters and exponents of the underground base stories. This week I will be talking to Miles Johnston, who was president of the former Irish UFO Research Centre. He's also a documentary filmmaker.
We came across a guy from Chelmsford called Barry King. And the thing was that one of the other people that was involved with the research was a lady called Lisa. And the point was that Lisa and Barry were coming up with the same basic data. And it's very simple that in bases in this country, in the United Kingdom, there is an alarming and horrific set of experiments going on with greys and reptilian aliens, with the modification of human beings and the false abduction of human beings known as MILABs, that's military abductions. So the basic story is that people get abducted and aliens walk in, and people then say, oh, I've been abducted by aliens, and they're taken away. But they're taken away to laboratories, and experiments and tests and things are performed on them, and US military is there and involved.
And King alleges that it's the National Security Agency of America, which is essentially controlling parts of our own intelligence, which control these bases.
And essentially, King was getting a lot of his information directly from British intelligence. He was himself abducted by British intelligence, according to his claims. Okay, this is his story. So he's abducted by British intelligence. British intelligence are then releasing a lot of information about this, and this is happening at the same time in the States, where the Dulce, New Mexico material was being released. So King's material was also pre-X-Files, but if you look at the X-Files TV series, an awful lot of the stuff that King released was in the X-Files. Okay. The difference is that, I mean, Timothy Good's book, that there's underground bases all over the world, but there's none in this country. The fundamental element is that King is saying that they are in this country. They're in Wales, the Berkshire countryside, and the Greenham Common base, which we know was used for mind control, because when the women peace protesters went and protested there for many years, we know that a lot of them were being exposed to some form of microwave mind control testing. Okay. And this is one of the other fundamentals brought in with James Casbolt as well. Okay. So just to summarise then, there's some kind of underground facility in the UK, according to Barry King, a network of underground facilities which are creating what he calls programmed life forms. So it's like an ET hybrid of some kind, which is then programmed to do... The whole point is that if you're going to create a hybrid being, you've got to have some kind of control of it. Now, the point about these beings that they're being built, the generated life forms, or the programmable generated life forms, is that they take about 3 months to gestate, and they look like greys. But these particular ones... got some sort of artificial womb or something like that. They're created, the details can vary. But he describes racks of them, doesn't he, in his testimony? Yes, and the important thing is that once they mature, they can be sitting on lying on these tables, and then they're activated. They just suddenly activate, get up, they're standing there, and then they can go to invisibility stage. Okay. Now, a lot of people will find this pretty hard to... Exactly, it is absolutely alarming. I'm not 100% sold on this, but I wouldn't want anybody to be sold on the testimony of any single person, any single individual. But what I did with Barry, I had a close look at Barry King's testimony, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. But he claims that there's a base, an underground base at a place called Peasmore, where essentially there are no access points visible at that place. They're all several miles away at other bases. You've got Harwell, which is about 10 miles north of Peasmore, which is a base that we know of, which has underground facilities. There's Greenham Common, as you mentioned, and then there's another one called Welford to the south west. So Greenham Common to the southeast, and then to the northwest you've got Watchfield. So it is
central to several other known bases.
Yes.
So my logic was, well, has he just chosen that as it seems like a likely point where there might be one, or I mean, I think we should actually have a look at some of Barry King's claims.
At the base, they run a social manipulation program. Includes brainwashing, genetic engineering, genetic experimentation. They've also been involved in creating life forms there for quite some time. The program is behind a lot of the abductions that take place. A lot of abductions are military organised and executed. I was involved with this program between the years 72 and 88. With the help of some defence intelligence people, I managed to get out away from the program, and with their help, a lot of information, as I say, has been passed out now to the public since February of last year. I've actually been to the base. I worked there between August and December of 79 in a security capacity.
Are you able to say which base?
Well, it's officially known as Peasmore, and when you came out with that I thought, crikey. That's its official title, is Peasmore. The underground part of the base, it was 450 yards by 650 yards and going down 6 levels.
So that's about 600 feet?
It's quite big. I think there's 50, 60 feet between each level, so it's going down quite some.
Yes, of course.
But other bases are connected. I've actually listed every single UK base that has an underground complex, and a number of those obviously are connected to Peasmore, either in a direct or indirect way.
Porton Down.
Porton Down, especially. Porton Down is connected to Boscombe Down.
And what's happening at Boscombe?
Boscombe, there was a secret US Air Force unit situated at Boscombe Down.
Underground?
Now, the experimentation that goes on between Porton and Peasmore is then shipped from Boscombe over to the States.
Alabama.
And how far would they be down underground?
The deepest point would have been about a mile. I only had access to a certain amount of information, so I only know about those 6 levels.
So, starting from scratch, how did you get involved with the base?
Well, I was sort of manoeuvred into working there as opposed to just being a guinea pig like many thousands of others. So it was a manoeuvred opportunity by the N.S.A. to get me into the base where they could keep an eye on me, as well as to actually take part in the security procedures. The survey is run by the governments of 3 main countries. That's the UK, the USA and Canada. This survey is actually run from Harwell, who have very close links, as I said, with Peasmore. The programme diverted some years ago to a very sinister side when they were using spare parts from humans. They were abducting people. A lot of these people never saw the light of day again. They were used as spare parts. I think what they're trying to produce in the long run is a super being. I've only seen 2 graves at Peasmore.
Right. And what do they look like?
Well, the typical picture everyone gives. Very small, very frail, large heads, very dark, wraparound eyes.
And were they escorted by military personnel?
Escorted by military and N.S.A. personnel.
And were there any reptilians in there?
On one occasion I did see, yes, what I would call reptilian.
So how different are they to the greys?
Totally different. These are much bigger, much stronger. They gave an aura of, strength and power, as if you don't mix with these.
So these as big as a man, or bigger, or?
Certainly bigger than, a good 6 inches taller than me, so well over 6 foot, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was more like a case of they could just walk around there as if they owned the place. That was just the assumption.
So they were not escorted? The reptilians were not escorted?
The reptilians, although obviously everyone in the base is, let's use the word loosely, escorted, but I think it was more a case of the reptilians were escorting the NSA personnel around the base.
You mentioned something about a trip seat in the boys'
Yeah,
documents.
there is an area of the base called the labs and the electronic areas. Situated in the labs are devices which are called trip seats, and these are very large chairs connected to very advanced computer systems, and a guinea pig is strapped to this chair. You are interfacing directly with the computers. During this interfacing, the individual is then programmed by the personnel at the base to literally do whatever they want you to do. It's advanced psychotronics.
Barry King's claims are very disturbing. Could such activities really be taking place directly under our feet beneath the green fields of England? As Miles Johnston said, one should not be sold on the testimony of a single individual. There is no publicly known military base at Peasmore, but that is not proof that there isn't one hidden underground. Perhaps if I could get independent corroboration that a base does exist there, this would help validate King's claims. Somebody who might know about a secret base is Alan Turnbull. Alan runs a very successful website, secretbases.co.uk, which documents and describes in amazing detail the UK's secret military bases using aerial photography and information gathered through painstaking research. Have you heard any rumours that there may be a facility at that location?
Well, I've certainly heard the same rumours that are abound on the internet, the same ones that you're referring to, and they always come from the same person, Barry King, and no one else. It's an elaborate internet rumour, conspiracy theory that's it is well orchestrated. However, there is no substance to the theory at all, because I've looked into detailed mapping, not normally publicly available, of the whole surrounding area around Peasmore, which is near Newbury in Berkshire. The important thing to notice that is on Ordnance Survey maps of the area, there are telltale signs of what appear at first sight to be underground tunnel networks, or at least access to those air vents and such like. But on closer inspection, they turned out to be not air vents for tunnel networks, they turned out to be disused pits. Right. And those are well marked all over the area around Peasmore village, because going back into 19th century maps, you'll see those lime pits that were all over the place around there. And it's these telltale signs that are left over of disused pits that are marked on Ordnance Survey maps, not access holes and vents to tunnels.
Based on information I have seen so far, I personally cannot accept the claims of Barry King. King has been very interested in ufology since the 1970s, and certainly would have knowledge of claims centered around other alleged bases, such as Dulce in New Mexico. It's possible that King has used this information and carefully merged it with what he has learned about UK military bases. Unless more information emerges from independent sources, I don't think we can accept King's claims on their own. I actually have one of my best friends is in the RAF, and I asked him, you know, what's going on with these underground bases, and he said, and I said to him that allegedly Rudloe Manor, which is a base west of those bases, is connected by some kind of underground tunnel, and Rudloe Manor is connected to Boscombe Down, which is connected to Porton Down, yes. And there's this network. It's fairly well accepted that some UK military bases are connected by secret underground tunnels for strategic military purposes. Unless more evidence arises, it's hard to believe that these bases and tunnels are being used by aliens. One of these secret bases, however, is believed to have been the intelligence gathering facility for information about UFOs. Tim Good explains.
What I've learnt, and I learnt a long time ago from two reliable sources, is that the most sensitive work on UFOs was done by the Provost, the Royal Air Force Provost and Security Services. And they are the equivalent of America's Office of Special Investigations. They deal with counterintelligence, policing, breaches of security and things like that. And they are renowned as being among the most efficient counterintelligence agencies in the world. Okay. Provost and Security Services. And as you may know, I got arrested for poking around Rudloe Manor. In Wiltshire, where the headquarters of the Provost and Security Services was located at the time in the 1980s. They've moved now. The actual lodger unit is buried, or was buried, within what's called the Flying Complaints Flight. I have some interviews with people who were involved in the Protestant security services, who had top secret clearances, but they could never get near the UFO. Right. That was the most restricted.
So you think that particular group has a lot of the knowledge?
They certainly did. I can't tell now if it's been passed on. There are other groups like naval intelligence. Nothing, as far as I know, has ever been released by the British government. Maybe something about Operation Mainbrace in the early 1950s, but I think they have a very deep involvement as well. That's my guess. Certainly the United States naval intelligence people do.
I mean, my friend in the RAF, he said to me, yeah, of course there's loads of tunnels and of course there's loads of underground bases.
Yes.
And
they
haven't got aliens in them. That was his comment. But,
absolutely, yes. I mean, the point is everybody's got to have their bases, they've got to have their underground things, they've got to have their research. Yeah. They're going to be connected by whatever they've got to be connected with for strategic and very logical reasons. So there's no problem with that. The problem is that another key researcher, which I included, was a guy called Ray Wardle, who was a very brave researcher and did a hell of a lot of really frontline research. And he did a lot of that in America, near Area 51. And he's got his own. I published some of his unique and very brave work. But the problem with Ray was that he had his first abduction at RAF Cosford, and that's in one of Timothy Good's books. Okay. So again, we keep on coming back to the situation where the abductions and the ET activity and the mind control and hostile actions against ordinary everyday people in this country and other countries are constantly going back to military bases which we think we expect are to defend us. But what has happened that since 1947 or around about that time, that these bases are actually actively involved with putting implants into us, abducting us, doing horrendous experiments with children from the age of 5. I mean, this is a very alarming situation if these whistleblowers are actually telling the truth.
So what is the link with the United States with regards to UFO intelligence?
A lot of the intelligence with regards to UFOs in the UK is held by GCHQ.
Definitely. Because, you know, GCHQ works hand in glove with America's National Security Agency. And they do share quite a lot of information, and it seems about the UFO situation as well. I have tried to get information from 1 or 2 people, but they're absolutely tight-lipped about it.
It seems that evidence of ET bases in the UK is limited, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. There are other countries around the world, however, where secret ET bases seem much more likely. One of these is the alleged Dulce facility in New Mexico. This base supposedly has 7 underground levels and is 4 cubic miles in size. At the base, extraterrestrials are set to carry out experiments for their genetics program. The rumours about this base started in the early 1980s when Paul Benowitz, an expert in radio communications, intercepted and decoded secret messages being sent by the military. These messages contained information about the activities within the base. Unfortunately, some time after Benowitz's initial claims, he was fed disinformation by US Air Force Sergeant Rick Doty and ufologist Bill Moore in order to debunk his information. Benowitz went through immense mental turmoil because of the way he was discredited and eventually had a nervous breakdown. In the late 1980s, a set of documents were released, alleged to have been authored by a security guard, Thomas Costello, who worked at the Dulce base. The documents describe reptilian and grey aliens residing in this base, controlling the lower levels. Costello is believed to have been on the run and assassinated by special forces to prevent him from publicising his claims further. It's interesting to ask, if Benowitz was mistaken in his claims, why did the authorities bother to muddy the waters about his information?
I think regarding the Dulce base, there was a lot of red herrings being thrown out by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Okay. So much disinformation, I don't know. All I can tell you is that I did hire a plane, I didn't fly it, but to overfly the site. It didn't learn much from that. I have been to the area. Certainly there were a lot of animal mutilations going on at that time in the area, but In my book, Unearthly Disclosure, I have revealed actual alleged locations of alien bases.
Yes.
So, you know, I've been quite specific. There was one in Virginia, for example, one in New Mexico, the Manzano nuclear weapons complex. There's a huge one, maybe two, in the Pacific Ocean.
Underneath the ocean.
Underneath the ocean, yes. And many other, if I can say, you know, in many other areas as well, in the Caribbean. There are quite a number. In Australia, there are quite a number.
Okay.
And this is not something that can readily be admitted by governments.
Timothy Good has spent years carefully forging relationships with people who, through their military connections, have knowledge of the ET and UFO issue. He has also spoken to hundreds of UFO witnesses worldwide, including some who have witnessed craft emerging from the sea. Based on the information from these sources, here's a summary of likely locations of extraterrestrial underground bases around the world. Alaska, the North Pacific, New Mexico, West Virginia, Puerto Rico, the Gulf of Mexico, Costa Rica, Bolivia, the Uruguayan coast, the Mid-Pacific, Australia, Antarctica, and the Soviet Union. Ex-police sergeant and UFO investigator Tony Dodd revealed strong evidence of an undersea ET base in the North Atlantic, a few hundred miles south of Iceland. Tony's information came from Icelandic fishermen who worked in the North Atlantic. He also had a contact in the US Navy who was posted on a ship in that region. Many fishermen had reported seeing huge UFOs emerging from the ocean, and also lights underneath their boats travelling at immense speeds. Tony was in mobile phone contact with many of the fishermen, and whenever they had sightings would telephone him. After collecting the testimony of many UFO cases in the North Atlantic region, where often UFOs were seen to emerge from the sea, he concluded that there must be an undersea ET base about 200 miles south of Iceland, under the Atlantic Ocean.
In conclusion, I think it is certain that there are secret underground military bases, and probably secret alien bases throughout the world. As for the numbers, I would not like to guess. As to whether any of these bases are shared, where humans and ETs collaborate, I think this is certainly possible, but cannot say I have come across any strong evidence to convince me of this yet. If you find any, please contact me at richplanet.net. Welcome to richplanet.net, the program which aims to uncover the truth behind the alien and UFO mystery. I'm Richard D. Hall, and in this week's program I look into the very murky subject of underground bases. There are more rumours about top-secret underground bases than you can shake a banana at. Some of these bases allegedly contain alien beings, although I wouldn't recommend shaking a banana at any of them. I will be speaking to Miles Johnston, who has spent years grappling with the various characters and exponents of the underground base stories. This week I will be talking to Miles Johnston, who was president of the former Irish UFO Research Centre. He's also a documentary filmmaker.
We came across a guy from Chelmsford called Barry King. And the thing was that one of the other people that was involved with the research was a lady called Lisa. And the point was, abducted by aliens and they're taken away, but they're taken away to laboratories and experiments and tests and things are performed on them, and US military is there and involved.
And King alleges that it's the National Security Agency of America, which is essentially controlling parts of our own intelligence, which control these bases.
And essentially, King was getting a lot of his information directly from British intelligence. He was himself abducted by British intelligence. That Lisa and Barry were coming up with the same basic data. And it's very simple that in bases in this country, in the United Kingdom, there is an alarming and horrific set of experiments going on with greys and reptilian aliens, with the modification of human beings and the false abduction of human beings known as MILABs, that's military abductions. So the basic story is that people get abducted and aliens walk in and people then say, oh, I've been